Get Pucked. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Get Pucked podcast. Dave, Matt, and Vito here, and it's been a rough little bit of time since our last episode, gentlemen. The Habs have not looked good. We're going to dive into it in this episode, but before we start, as I like to ask, how are you guys doing?
Great.
Fantastic.
Great and fantastic.
Let's
well,
do this.
I think now everybody knows you're both liars because you cannot be great and you cannot be fantastic if you've been watching Montreal Canadiens hockey this past week or so.
It's a rebuild.
Oh, it's a rebuild. Okay, you know what? Rebuild or not, I can still look and watch a hockey game and be left with a sense of ugh. And that's really I want to start with you guys. I want to start because it's been the talk of the town. It's been the number one thing I think most people watching the game and keeping a pulse on the Canadiens have been sort of identifying, even as a casual fan. You watch these games and immediately you're met with a thought of, where's the defense? What's going on with the defense? Why are teams able to just come in and shoot so much? Why are people not getting hit? Why are people sort of losing their man, and on it goes. And so in that vein, I want to start with this to kind of start the things rolling with you guys today. The defensive woes on the team. First and foremost, are we all in agreement they exist, or do we have to debate this one?
No kidding.
Okay, good. So I want to ask you, you didn't notice? You got to open your eyes a little bit. I want to know, in your opinion, what is the root cause of it? There's been a lot of people out there, a lot of the normal media guys talking about it, and of course the fan base always throwing their opinions around, and I like to hear yours. I'll give you some examples. Do you put it on the fact that it's a rookie, mostly young, learning defensemen, and these are growing pains? Do you put it on the players and say they're just not skilled? They're just not skilled enough to be NHL regulars? Do you put it on the injury of Kaden Guhle throwing everything in the mix? Do you put it on the coach? A lot of people putting it on the coach these days, saying there's something about the coaching and it's not there and he's not adapting. What do you have to say about that?
Okay, it's a bit of a perfect storm. It's several things. Okay, so one of them is the fact that there are key injuries on the defensive core, and there's one of our key veterans that are actually playing hurt. It's a known fact. Matheson's currently playing hurt. At the same time, there's a lot of inexperience in the team, so it was bound to happen where you're going to see young kids that are going to be in the D-core, and mistakes are going to happen. There's going to be the growing pains that we're going to have to deal with and all of that stuff. Now, that's one part. The second part is that the fact that I put some blame on the administration because they went into it knowing full well that they were going to have these young kids on the back end, and there was going to be some of these mistakes and whatnot. So they should have, if they really wanted to mitigate that, I'm not going to say avoid it completely, they could have added and should have added another veteran defenseman, okay, on top of just having Savard and Matheson. That's number two. Number three is at the same time, you're looking at Martin St. Louis, who's basically transitioning now. You see that the coaching style as a whole, he's implementing a type of system, and it's going to take some time for all of that to happen.
I don't mean to laugh.
I'm in the zone.
I know. I just want to point out one thing in case if you're listening to this and you don't see it on YouTube, just to be clear how serious he is. He keeps his hand in the frame when he's talking, and there's a pen between his fingers as if he's got he's writing the notes down. Like he is on fire today. I'm sorry. Proceed, sir.
I lost my train of thought, but okay.
It was great, though.
You see he's implementing a system now, and it's going to take some time for all of them to get used to it. I've had an issue with the fact that they had Kaden Guhle and Matheson on the first pairing, with Kaden Guhle not playing on the strong side. But I've said this since the start of the season, but they went that way. Now he got hurt. He was a big minute eater, and they can't seem to replace that. Reinbacher, who had no plans to play in the with Montreal this season. Really, you guys are all pulling out your pens now? Okay. Had no plans to be part of the Montreal roster on opening night. Got hurt, but it's depth on the right side that they lost. Now they brought up Mayu, and it's still inexperience. So it's a big perfect storm of everything is the issue. And I'm gonna just say this. I said at the start of the episode, it's still a rebuild. The only issue I have with the rebuild notion right now is the fact that last year and the year before, even though they would lose, the games were entertaining.
Okay, well, hold on a second on that thought, because I don't necessarily think the games are not entertaining. There are moments. There's Caulfield who's scoring goals. There's stuff.
Have you
There's
seen
things
that
happening.
Rangers game?
The Ranger game was bad, and we'll talk about the Rangers game in a second, because that was, I think, the biggest mismatch they're going to have for this year. I think the Rangers are like proper cup contenders, and like you keep mentioning, the Habs are a rebuilding team. So I'm not overly surprised by that. But the thing that I kind of want to just bring up to counter your point quickly before Dave jumps in with his take is, you mentioned it's rebuilt 3-4 times now. Why does it seem like they're regressing? Why does it seem like they're worse than what they were last year? Well, if it's a rebuild, I can understand if it's the same if it's the same across the board. It looks worse.
I'll tell you why. Some of the players that are in the bottom 6 are a little older. One of the players that the Canadiens are heavily relying on, which is Kirby Dach up front, didn't play for an entire season, and we're dealing with the growing pains there of him trying to shake off that rust. So there's basically growing pains all over the place right now. And again, there was key injuries that have happened so early on in the season that they're trying to figure things out and shuffle with players that basically aren't their top level players at the moment. Top level. I'm saying this with air quotes.
Well, I'm talking about defense, though, right? You mentioned
if it's just defense, there's too many injuries. You have a young kid in Lane Hudson who's eating up 30 minutes in his rookie year. That shouldn't be happening yet. Okay, no matter how talented he is and how much that shouldn't be happening.
Let's go ahead, Dave.
So that leads to what the real answer is, and the real answer is coaching. In my opinion, I think that there's something to do with a lack of experience. But when you take a guy who's like Lane Hudson, it's not a strong suit to play. His strong suit is what he's going to bring offensively, and to rely on him for 30 minutes a game is absolutely nonsense. That should have never happened. It should not ever happen. And I understand there's injuries. I understand what happens, and you eat other people's minutes, but it's poor decision making, in my opinion. And it's also just, you can see like so many times down low, you're watching them down low and they're getting pinned 2 defensemen behind their net or both on the same side. And that's coaching, man. That's not a player doing that on his own. It's poor execution of the game plan, or it's a poor strategy to begin with. And I just think that, in my opinion, Marty St. Louis, and I've stressed at the beginning of the year, and I don't want to harp on it, and I don't think it's a problem, and I don't say it's a fireable offense, and don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying you're starting to see Marty St. Louis' inexperience in different facets of the game. Offensively too, you see some mistakes in my mind. Like, I just think that's one of the issues. We could talk about injuries, but Kane Gooley played 5 out of the 7 games, and they haven't been good like the entire year, I would say, defensively.
Yeah, but it's up to Stefan Robida to deploy his defensemen. It's him that deploys the defensemen.
It's the coaching
staff. Yeah, we could talk coaching staff if you want, but I'm Marty St. Louis is responsible for his coaches. Okay, and again, the pointing of the finger, we pointed it too much at freaking Burrows for the power play for years, when clearly there's more going on to that than
the power play and the PK have improved drastically so far this year.
They've improved drastically, but then that change should have been made. It was a mistake to keep him for that long. You understand? Like, the coaches are not only the coaching of the players, the head coach is the coach of the other coaches. And you have to get a grip on everything. So you can blame Stefan Robida, but it's just the inexperience of this coaching staff, in my opinion, which seems to be the issue. And the deployment of the players and where you rely on these guys, I think, is an issue. I don't think anybody here was calling for another veteran defenseman to come into the mix. I think that everybody knew that you're going to go with this mix of Savard, Madison, and the youth. I think that's everybody was on board with that. Mm-hmm. It just isn't playing out the way it's supposed to be playing out. And to me, it's because of how they're being used and what's being expected of each player. And I know guys, we're 7 games in this year. There's a million time. There's so much time for improvement. But if you're asking me right now in the 7-game sample, this is what my answer is. And it's unfortunate. And again, like, why, I sent you guys a link earlier, like Struble. I was a big component of Struble. I thought he had the best camp out of all the defensemen. I thought he should be playing. He's played 2 games, and I know he was injured, but like, he should be in there, and he should be an answer to be leaned on.
Well, he's going to be in there no matter what now.
I know. Well, that's it. Well, and we'll see what happens, but it's just, why were these decisions made? It's just that's what has me scratching my head a couple of times.
I mean, there's a deployment aspect of it that I think a lot of people are talking about. I mean, yes, I don't think you're looking at anybody, like you said, I don't think anybody started the season saying, oh my God, why are they starting with four younger guys, four rookie guys? We all knew that they got the skill. And one of the things we talked about leading into the season and even right at the start was the depth that they have at defense. It was a strength for this team.
Yeah, but except for the right side.
Except for your right side. And the fact still remains that, Caden Goulet going down the way he did, even though he played the majority of the games, it's still a pain that he's playing on the wrong side. It's still, it's one of those weird things that I don't know why it's not being addressed, why perhaps you don't just leave Mailloux up or whatever it is that you got to do in order to solve that. But him getting hurt is besides the point. I just think fundamentally, when you look at the deployment, one of the things that was noticed and was brought up on local radio that I heard, and I went back to look up clips, and sure enough, it was true. They're actually lost. It seems like they're trying to do something and change the way that they've been playing defense, and they're trying to adapt to a deployment style that they're not, and they're bumping into each other.
But
they're actually hitting each other because they don't know where to go.
They're implementing a new system. They're implementing a system now. Before it was, okay, focus on each individual player, develop the player. It's the first 2 years of Marty St. Louis is what I'm talking about, and develop those people to be a certain way, to change the mindset a little bit on how to be basically change their instincts a little bit on the ice. Now it's actually it's time to adopt the system that I've always had in mind, but it wasn't the time yet. Now everybody's going to be lost, but on top of that, you're having players that are having to play on their offside. So when you're even Barron being out, who was a natural right-handed defenseman, you're going to probably have Struble and Xhekaj there. It's another LD moving to the RD. So now you're going to have two pairings once Goulet is back who have players on their offhand. You're telling guys to not only implement the new system, change your instincts because of the last 2 years, but now change what's comfortable for you and how you've been playing and where you've been playing for probably 10 years.
I'm sure that's a factor, playing on your offside. I'm sure it's a factor. I don't believe that professionals like this would be that thrown off by playing on their offside to the point of what we're seeing, unless of course you're talking about, like we're just suggesting, everybody is trying to do a defensive system that they've never quite done before. And then I beg the question, now that you've seen the results the past couple of games, and Dave makes a bang on point, and I'm in an agreement with it for the most part. It is only 7 games. It's the beginning of the season. It's not terrible. It's not an insurmountable amount of points that they're behind, but it's not just the points. It's how they look. It doesn't look like any of it is kind of sticking. And do you give them more games? How long do you go with this until you're like, listen, we gotta put a better product out here. It's nice to practice, but you can't practice in real games. You do it maybe for a bit and then you bring it back or something, because quite obviously the guys they're not getting it. Now, again, devil's advocate here. It is just 7 games. Maybe you do it a little bit more. You have the injuries, so why not try something out? Sure. But, it just seems like whatever was there, whatever that promise was at the beginning of the season, even after Liney's injury and stuff, still it was like, okay, they should be better. Or at the very least be on par with what they were like at the end of last year. And they're worse. It looks
bad.
Don't
forget, it takes 2-3 games to win, and then the enthusiasm changes, the whole dynamic changes.
Yeah,
all of it changes. It's so early on in this. Last year, and while I'm about to say and use another team as an example, last year the Edmonton Oilers were basically out. Everyone's like, they lose one more game, they're done. They ended up making it to the finals. Now, obviously, the Edmonton Oilers and the Montreal Canadiens are nowhere near the same thing right now. Montreal doesn't have a Connor McDavid, they don't have a Leon. I'm just saying it's about the number of games that have been played versus what could happen in just 1 or 2 games. There's a lot of teams that are quote unquote contenders, or they're supposed to be a lot better than they are, that are struggling so far at the start of the season. Toronto Maple Leafs are one. Yeah, they're piling up some wins, but look at their first line. They've been struggling. Even their power play line is being shuffled. It's just a weird start for a lot of teams, and it's even a weird start for a lot of players. There's a lot of key players that are having slow starts, and there's a lot of not random players, but players that you wouldn't have expected that are having these crazy fire starts to the season.
I get it, but the point is that the Canadiens were kind of, sorry to interrupt you, man.
No, sorry, I want to ask you a question anyways. Go ahead.
we all agreed that the Canadiens are kind of in like, okay, let's see the next step mode. And that's why it's everything they do is amplified, right? Because you were expecting right at the gate for them to take the next step and to see, okay, what can you do to improve on last year? And so far in the 7 games, there's no improvement. There's no improvement. There's nothing that's been improved.
But guys, they have the exact same personnel as last year practically. And
okay,
isn't that worse?
But
hold on a second. But the pieces they've added to help give a fire, give a boost, and all those things got hurt before they could ever start. Patrick Laine was supposed to be a significant.
Okay, Patrick Laine, I get it. Patrick Laine got hurt.
Kaden Guhle got out in the first 3 games of the season. Matheson's been playing hurt and is definitely not at the same start as he was last year.
Okay, but you're just making excuses now. You still have
these are reasons. They're not excuses.
They are excuses, man, because you have Lane Hudson, you have Kirby Dach. Like again, Laine got traded in August 20-something. Right before then, we were all discussing about how we were happy and excited about the season and see the improvement. So then Laine came and you got a little bit more excited, but you were still expecting an improvement.
But there were still question marks. You're going into a season with several questions. We were going into a season with several question marks. Okay, and those question marks are still there. They just happen to be there with everybody injured all over again.
You're just being a Habs apologist, man. Like I understand that it makes sense what you're saying, but you can't just brush everything off because Laine got injured. Like that's the point. The point is you have the same personnel, so you want to see everybody take that extra next step and to be a little bit better. And I understand. We were discussing, the Canadiens have the best, perhaps top 5, bottom 6 of the entire NHL. What sentiment was on this very podcast. And the first line is a lock. It's amazing. Everything is going good.
They are, and they're missing their winger now.
So happy with Lane Hudson and this and that. It's just you. Everybody was excited about this team coming into the season, and you wanted to see us to make a step. And now you can't just use inexperience. But Kirby Dach's been out for a year as an excuse. That's not the point. The point is you want to see the next step, anyways.
It's hard to see the next step in players when the players that are supposed to help you also get to that next step are either hurt or out of the lineup.
There's going to be injuries every single year on every single team.
But Montreal's got a historical amount.
Okay, but hold on a second. Speaking of the injuries and going back to the part of it only being 7 games, one of the things that's out there right now that I wanted to bring up because a little bit of a head scratcher is there seems to be a legitimate rumor that the Habs are looking on the trade market for a top 4 defenseman. Is that a panic move, or is this something that they were missing and this is just you're stating the obvious? They're looking to make to get a veteran on defense.
Well, there's a key detail that the rumor is saying it's a top 4 right-handed defenseman. So I don't look at it as a panic move, depending on if and who they acquire, right? It'll because we always said that there's a need there to shore up the depth or add pieces on the right side. If they were going to go to get a left-handed defenseman or just go trade or go sign something to go, then yes, it's a panic move. But it seems like they've been wanting a right-handed defenseman to be part of their solution for the short and medium term at the very least.
Yeah, but it looks like they weren't going to mortgage the future to go and do it. Now the rumor is starting to suggest that given the way that the team is going, given the injuries and given what the expectations were, and the feeling from the fan base and the perhaps lessened of the patience that they possess, is this a move that should be looked at with a lot more expedience after 7 games only?
I think it's always good to add a top 4 defenseman. I don't think there's ever a panic. It's never considered a panic move. I think you always need to add, especially looking at the Canadiens depth chart, like you need to add a top 4 defenseman anyways going forward. Like there's no question about it. So I don't think it's a panic move. I don't think they're going to mortgage a future to do it either. Like I don't believe that. I know a lot of Canadiens fans are worried about that, but I don't think that's an issue.
So it's the same situation as the preseason then,
I think
the offseason even. Nothing
I think
really
maybe
changed.
Well, I think maybe the only change would be like, okay, instead of looking for it down the road, let's look for it now. But I think that the price that they were always going to pay is what they're going to pay. Maybe they'll add in a couple. I don't even think that is. I think Kent Hughes is going to go see what's out there now as opposed to what down the road. I think that's the only difference. I think that they have a set price point of what they're willing to pay for things. They've proven to be extremely reasonable in terms of making deals. So you kind of have to give them your trust when it comes to this. And I think that at the end of the day, you need to add. Like, there's no team that's complete, and the Canadiens are definitely not complete. And I talk all you want about prospects, but I'm sick of talking about prospects. I'm tired of it. You don't need to get these players because this guy is slotted in, coming in. That is BS. It's a 100% BS way of running a team. If you're just going, because this is what happens. Lane Hudson slots in there. Everybody knows Lane Hudson slots in there. Everybody knows Mailloux is going to slot in there. But if you put them all there right now, this is what happens. You look at this team 7 games in and you're like, it's a disaster. You can't run a team that way. And that's how fans run a team, because they love the prospect. But that's not how you run a team. And you should absolutely go get another piece. Even up front, you should go get another piece. And I know they have the excuse of they're waiting on Laine, and that's going to be their deadline or their trade acquisition, which is fine, to be honest, because you have to see how he's going to integrate into the. But again, and we're not talking about the offense yet, because we will, I assume so. But there's things to address there as well. So I don't think it's rushing it. I don't think it's a panic move. I just think it's a necessary move that they're moving up. Maybe.
Okay.
I think they always. Go ahead then, sorry.
It's just going to be extremely hard to make a move at this time of year anyways. I don't think there's many teams that are willing to deal at this time. So whatever they do, it's going to be interesting to see what they do, but it's, we'll have to see. It'll probably be a little bit of time before that actually happens.
Yeah, I'd be super surprised if there'd be a move that happens in the next week, 2 weeks, even a month. It's maybe before the Christmas break, you might see something. Maybe. Yeah. At that point, you're about 20 game, closer to the 20 game mark, if not the 20 game mark. But again, it's. I think before the season even started, they have players that, okay, we're going to start the season with them, but they're kind of like part of their expendable list, if you want to call it that. Players that they know that at some point they're going to need more minutes, they're going to need to play, but they're willing to part ways with to be able to go get a piece that fits right now and fits maybe down the road a little bit. I also think that if they're going to go for a top 4 defenseman, they're not going to go grab another 34, 35-year-old person. They're looking for somebody
that's got to be the right age.
The age range, in my opinion, of what Patrick probably is.
But isn't that the problem? Didn't we talk about this? I mean, I don't want to get into it now, and we can save it for next time. But we had talked in previous episodes when I threw that question out. Who would you go after?
I have a defenseman in mind.
Now you have one?
All
right, well, hit me with it then, because at the time, we couldn't come to a consensus about who would be the right guy.
I think Rasmus Andersson will be a perfect piece to add to the Montreal Canadiens roster in the back end.
Okay.
I think you're going to have to pay a lot to get him.
Oh, well, yeah, but remember, there was rumors circulating about Rasmus Andersson last year. It's not to say that Montreal won't have to pay a price. They probably will. The thing is Calgary's probably not going to do that right now because they're having a strong start.
Well, that's it. I think
right? But this is the problem.
How many times are they going to let Kent Hughes fleece them? God.
But that's the thing right now. There's another team that's looking for defensemen as well on the right side, and even a top pairing defenseman or top 4 defensemen, and that's Utah, right? So you're already starting to see teams that are doing your due diligence to try to acquire defensemen, and those teams that even have players, serviceable ones, are kind of saying, well, no, it's kind of like too early right now. So Kent Hughes, the rumor going out, is not, in my opinion, is not so much a rumor that it is that the guy's just doing his job.
I mean, I think it was a clickbaity title myself. I think that it just sparked the fandom's, immediate response and everybody talking about it, which prompted me to just bring it up here. But yeah, you're 7 games in, man. It's 7 games. It's not great. And they played against a team like, for example, the one that really exposed them. Because everybody was saying they were rough games, but nobody talked about it like the way they were talking about it now until after the New York game. And that New York team is just on another level. And I know it's a sucky thing to say because you talk about a league, you talk about a league full of parity for the most part, but the Montreal Canadiens, like we've said ad nauseum, are a rebuilding team with a very young core and very young on defense, and they got exposed by a cup contending team.
They got exposed by a team that went through what the Montreal Canadiens are going through now, but are now further. They're not rebuilding.
That doesn't make me feel any better as a fan. They got beaten up. I don't care what New York was like 7 years ago.
It doesn't matter. They're where they have to be. If you look at the players they have, even their first line centers and whatever, and Zibanejad, Trocheck, they're in their late 20s, early 30s. If you look at Montreal, doesn't have a Shesterkin. They don't have it.
Yeah, but
they don't have it
yet. No, I'm sure.
Yeah, unless Jacob Fowler or becomes that person. But they don't have those pieces. Montreal doesn't have an Adam Fox yet. They don't got a Jacob Trouba that's going around taking off people's heads, which I don't want that, by the way.
Which is exactly my point, though. I don't even want to talk about the Trouba hit. my point was that this is a team that is at the point their window is open and they're contending, and they're a very, very strong team. They have tremendous chemistry. They have all-stars on their team. They have Vezina winning goalies on their team. They have Norris Trophy defensemen on their team. Yeah, it was going to be an uphill battle. But what it did was put the microscope on the team to really accentuate their flaws. And the Canadiens have quite a few of them because they're a rebuilding team.
It's normal.
But I want to talk another thing about defense, because we're talking about defense, and it can't be a conversation about defense without bringing up everyone's favorite defenseman, Arber Xhekaj. And so this is another thing that was kind of going around, which I thought was fascinating. Everybody was a Martin St. Louis stan, well, maybe except for Dave, but most people were. And so Martin St. Louis can say and do no wrong. However, more than apparently, it happened. Xhekaj received some words during a press conference from Martin St. Louis about him that fans are calling harsh, and they're taking exception to it. And I wanted to know your thoughts. And for those that haven't had the chance to hear it, I won't exactly do the same way that he said it, but the quote is, quote, "I expect a better version. Staying alert and consistent. You should be worried about making mistakes. He's not a rookie anymore, so you should say, I got to be better. Very simple. It's not like we nitpick everything he does, but he has to be better. I expect Xhekaj to be a better version, presumably of himself." End quote. Does that seem harsh to you?
No. Nope.
Just throwing it out there. Not at all?
For those who are saying that's harsh, you're too soft. Because if you go back to the way coaches used to speak, and I'm not saying that was right too, that's like beating up somebody with a pillow. You know what I mean? Like he's basically saying something that I think Dave has even been saying it for the last 2 episodes, is that we want to see Xhekaj take the next step. He needs to take the next step, and what we, I've been saying it now, and I've been beating this drum that this is a guy that I could see being a strong number 4, a 5 at worst if he hits his ceiling. He's got to start working towards that ceiling. He took a bridge deal, which basically we all know what a bridge deal is. It's a prove me contract. Prove it. Go out there, prove it, be consistent. Yeah. He can be the guy that he is and gets the penalties and, acts like the sheriff and all that stuff. Add another element to the game, but be consistent.
Because I was curious about your take, by the way, because I know Dave's feeling about him and I know you're feeling about him. And while you both like the guy, I think you hold him to a much higher regard than Dave does. So just out of curiosity's sake, from to surmise what you're saying, you agree with that criticism. That's it's harsh or not, you agree with what Martin St. Louis is saying about Xhekaj.
I agree, because I want to see Xhekaj take the next level. I want him to prove me right.
This isn't even about the next level. It seemed like his play was bad. And he's got to be at least himself, but we expect more from him. So you're in agreement with that.
I do expect more from him, 100%. Okay. I'm not expecting him to light the world on fire and be, a top pairing guy and all that stuff. But at some point, you're going to have to expect that he's going to, if he's not going to ever be that 4 and hit that ceiling, he's going to be a serviceable bottom pairing guy who's going to be consistent, be a sheriff, be all these things where you bring up that value and you say, you're that guy. You know what your role is. You're going to be that guy. I don't want it to be where you have one solid game from him and then 4 games of what the heck did you do there? So he's got to balance it out a little bit.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I mean, look, I agree with everything Marty St. Louis is saying. I think he probably watched our show and he was like, "Oh, I agree with Dave. Let's light a fire on the
exactly what he did."
Okay,
exactly.
Because to recap my thoughts on Arber Xhekaj is, I think starting from last season up until the preseason, I think that he was his game has stalled. It's completely stalled. We haven't seen the progress, I find, from the end of last season to this season. And I think that had he not had that preseason where he was fighting everybody and stepped in on this and that and the sheriff, and I think he would have been a candidate, and especially looking how Marty St. Louis views him now, to start the season in Laval. And I spoke to you guys and you guys called me crazy and you said it wouldn't happen, and of course, because of what happened and because of the Canadiens' defensive situation, it didn't. But I strongly believe that they're probably looking at it right now, because I think that they're not satisfied with what his game is. I think he's an NHL defenseman, guys. I'm an Arber guy. You know, I've spoken to you about him in the past.
Are you though?
I am though. Was I not the guy who said they should bring in Arber?
Yeah, but that was one episode many moons ago. You kind of like changed your tune a little bit.
I didn't change my tune, man. It's because this is what happens, okay? And this is what happens in every fan base, but mostly in Montreal, is the stand. You talked about a Marty St. Louis stands. Well, what happened is the Marty St. Louis stands met the Arber stands, okay? And this is why right now Marty St. Louis is here, and now everyone's fighting for Arber, is because fans get attached to people, okay? And they can't accept that a guy is just a guy, and he's a player. He's a serviceable NHL player. He's fun to watch. He's exciting to watch. He plays the game that they want, where he's rough. He'll go fight people. He'll defend his teammates. He's a good guy. He has a good story from Costco. He dressed up as Costco at a holiday party. People, that's not enough for people. Everybody wants to project more onto these guys, and this is why the Habs fan base, more than anyone else, gets disappointed, is because they take a simple player who plays a role and they put him up. Dutch Gretzky for Dale Weiss, and this and that, and it just
make him a hero.
Yes, it becomes a huge hero. And then the second you poke him and you say, "Okay, but guys, he doesn't belong in the top 4 right now, guys. Come on, that's an absolutely ridiculous thing." Everyone attacks you, and it's crazy. You're an Arber hater. You're like you guys now. Oh, you're an Arber hater. I'm not. I love the guy.
I didn't say you're an Arbor hater. I just said that there's.
Dave, you're sensitive on this side.
I'm not sensitive whatsoever. I'm a realist. I'm more. You guys are the sensitive ones. I'm the realist.
Oh my God, he just hit us with the classic. I'm not sensitive. You're sensitive.
I'm being real. I'm always. I come from I come from a non-emotional place where I'm looking at what I see, and analytically, he was not playing well. And you guys all called me crazy, and look what's happened.
First off, okay, pump those brakes. No one said, I don't believe, unless if you find me the clip, we called you crazy. You said he wasn't playing well. I mean, we were in agreement. We simply said, I think if remembering back to what we're all kind of talking about, that the element that Arber Xhekaj brings is an intangible, and it's important to the team, because without him, it falls on who? Who's the guy that's out there to kind of help and patrol? And then we had some amazing comments actually on that video about the necessity. Do you actually have a guy there as a mitigating factor to prevent people getting hit and hurt on your team or not? And I'm not going to go into that again. That was fun. You're welcome to go back a couple episodes if you're listening now and check that out.
Great episode.
It was a lot of fun. The thing about Xhekaj now is to just call this in, he's playing the Saturday game. It looks like he's back in the lineup. So he's not going, there's no Laval at this moment. He's coming back in to see if he can prove himself and get in there. The thing about it, to your point though, is he is a role guy. I don't believe anybody here is suggesting that he's going to be a top pairing defenseman. If he sits on your bottom of the bottom pairing, so be it. But when you're on that bottom pairing, I think what we're all saying is you have to be more than a nuclear deterrent. You can't just be out there waiting to drop those gloves and fight. You got to be able to play defense. He's got a boomer of a shot too. He's got to use it. He's got to get up there. He's got to make sure that he's in the right positions. But I think what people, going back to the original question about the criticism and was it fair or not too harsh, this is, I believe, the first time Martin St. Louis calls out a player specifically like that without any kind of softness. There was no softness. Harsh or not, that's up for you to decide whether you think it was too harsh or not. But I think we can all agree there was no softness to it. It was straight. It was direct. He expects better. Good. I want more from him. Good. He hasn't been playing well.
And to me, if you ask yourself where that harshness is coming from, I think it's a guy like Marty St. Louis. He sees Arber, he sees what he could bring to the table. And I think, like Vito, he expects him to be a little bit more and taking that next step. And he's disappointed. And that's where it comes from. It comes from a disappointment in the player.
But is he not disappointed of anybody else?
Of course he is.
So why not so the question is that people are asking, why not call out those guys too?
Because he's not there to just call out random players. The reporter that was there asked about Arber Xhekaj.
There it is. Thank you.
Oh yeah, it
That
was a pointed question.
It was a pointed question, and that's what everybody seems to forget. It's not like he sat there on a soapbox and just said, you know what? We played like crap, but it's because of Arber Xhekaj. Guys, He got asked the question specifically about Xhekaj.
To be fair, though, he
That's
gets asked a question about a lot of people, and he doesn't always answer that one, too.
Fair, and it seems like Arber does take a bit more of a beef, and I'm not exactly sure why that's the case, but to be fair about this particular instance, and that was where I was coming full circle to try to get to, and you called it out perfect, Vito, he was asked about the player. Then he said, I expect more from the player. Maybe if he was asked about Dvorak, or if he was asked about Dach, or if he was asked about Suzuki, or whatever, he might say something.
Not if. If he was asked about those players, he would definitely say something, because he's the one that knows best about his own players and what they should work on and what they need to work on and whatever the case may be. But the reporter specifically asked about Xhekaj and focused on Xhekaj for the same reasons why podcasts, bloggers, whatever, bring up Xhekaj. He's popular enough to get the views and clicks and whatnot.
Well, he was sitting out a couple games, and it was like, what are you doing with him? I mean, there is a follow-up to that, of course, and you're right. He is kind of that sort of folk hero at this point. The interesting guy that they have it now, because the answer is simple, but it is somebody that I wanted to talk to you guys about right here at the end of our episode. When do we need to start worrying about Kirby Dach? When does that become a thing? Is now okay? Maybe it's now. Some people are saying, "Listen, he missed all last year. You're going to need to give him half a season before you start to worry about it." That was already an answer that was addressed from the team, who said, "We're." I think it was Kent Hughes even, or it was Gorton who mentioned it, saying, "We expected this. We're taking our time with him. There's no pressures. Let him get his legs again." But they've moved him off his line when Slafkovsky got hurt, and he played the wing up there to try to get him going. Not amazing, but not terrible. More or less the same.
It was a little bit better. It was a little bit better.
A little bit more engaging. So I guess the question there is, like Dave said, now when do you think you got to start worrying about it? And then you can explain.
I'm not ready to be worried completely about Kirby Dach as a player and what he could, once he shakes off the rust, what he could be. What I'm starting to worry about is Kirby Dach as a center. That's what I'm really worried about. It's the face-offs. Like being below 40% again is an issue. When you have a guy that's that big, that tall, and whatnot, like you have an advantage in the face-off circle just in sheer strength alone. Like, okay, there's a intelligence behind face-off, there's a skill behind face-off. That's why you have Sidney Crosby and Patrice Bergeron on the past that were among the best, if not the best in the league. But it's him as a center, and what I'm starting to be worried about, that I'm still willing to give him time, because again, he did miss a full season and he does have a history with injuries, is that I hope it's not another. I don't want to bring up I have to bring up this guy. I hope it's not another Jonathan Drouin situation where it's a player that would be better suited on the wing, but we got him to be the second line center. You know, so I'm. Now, it's not bad. It's not a bad thing for Montreal, because they still have a need at center, and they'll have a need at wing. You know, if Kirby Dach gets shifted to the wing, but you go and acquire a bona fide second line center, and all of a sudden your second line ends up being Dach, whoever that second line center is, and maybe next year Demidov, or better for it.
Yeah,
but we don't know.
Let's not talk next year just yet, though.
I get it, but I'm just saying it's.
So you're not worried, is what you're saying?
I'm not
really.
I'm not worried. I'll be worried if come game 25, Dach is still struggling the way that he is. He can't produce. His faceoffs haven't improved at all. Then I'll start being like, okay, we have an issue. We're back to being a one-line team with Patrick Laney eventually coming back.
Okay. And Dave, you saying now is the concern.
Okay, so I mean, I'm still willing to give him the year. I'm still forget half a year. Like, you obviously have to give him the year to see what you're going to have. I think it's okay to show concern right off the bat. I think that the 1 year excuse of missing a year of hockey is not necessarily. I think when I was working with Mitch Melnick, I did a deep dive on this, and I'd have to look into my notes. But I think players who come back from long stretches missing, like for example, Steven Stamkos missed. He played 17 games 1 year, missed the entire season when he broke his leg, and he came back this year, and I think he scored points in his first 12 games, and I think he put up like 20-something points in his first 12 games, and he put up 86 points that season. I think it's a myth of people coming back and needing time to readapt to that point. Carey Price came back from an injury. He was looking fine. I'll have to go back and look at my notes, but I had a list of like 8 players who missed a good stretch of a season to come back the next year, and they came back fine.
Sorry, Dave, to cut you off. The players you're comparing to are also just guys with a whole different hockey IQ level. The one player that I would probably give you, if you mentioned him,
but he said there's others.
That I would mention is probably Sean Monahan. That's a good comparable. The guy was out for hip injuries. Montreal got him, and he came out of the gate strong, and then tapered off as the season started to go on a little bit, because you saw like the fatigue
and that's what you expect.
Start to cut down.
And that's what you would expect. You would expect him to not be as, he wouldn't have the longevity probably, and he'll taper off at one point because his fitness levels are probably not up to par because he obviously missed a year. That's what you expect to miss. But I feel as though that's an excuse we're using. And again, the question mark to me always, and I was clear about this all the time, was I'm not sure he was ever going to be that second line center. And I think that it was something that everyone was anointing him, that giving him that role. Okay, he's a second line center. You don't have to go look in the offseason. You don't have to. He's there, and you didn't know what you had with him. You haven't seen enough of Kirby Dach. You saw him at a half season in garbage time, and again, I need to see more of him, and I'm willing to give it to him, and I'm willing to see this entire season. But the fact, I was expecting him honestly to come out guns blazing, and the fact that he didn't is a bit concerning to me, a little bit. And the fact that he is seemingly better on the wing than he is at it is all these things, like Vito said, is worrisome to me. And I think that I'm willing to give him the time, but I think there is you have to look inwards and you have to start seeing, okay, what happens if he's not the guy.
My other concern with him is that every time he seems to hit the floor or something, it's like, things are happening to him. It's like, oh, did he get hurt again? Oh, because it's like he's at that stage, It's like he's that one injury.
That's not his fault.
No, it's not. But right now, because what would be a success story, let's say he finishes the season as a 40, 50-point guy. Let's just say. But he finished the season. That would be successful for him because the guy has not finished the season.
But at what cost?
Once.
At what cost? Because he does look like he's timid. He doesn't look like the guy that was going into the boards hard after people like last year. It doesn't look like he.
But Matt,
it looks like a guy who's shell-shocked a bit.
There's a psychological thing when a person gets a certain injury.
If he makes it to the end of the year and he's not the same power forward that he was trending to be, so what? Now I don't want to see him get hurt.
He's going to come back,
but he's got to come back to that guy.
It's going to come back, but he's going to have to take a couple of bumps and bruises where his brain says, I'm okay. I could take this bump.
Yes.
Right now, it's like, if I get hurt, if I twist my knee again,
yes.
It's a fear thing. It's a psychological thing in athletes or anybody really. You break your leg a certain way when you're going to go back to that spot.
Without question.
Apprehensive.
Without question. But I'm not being paid millions of dollars. Neither are those people. This is his job. And he's paid that money to do this thing. Now, I'm not concerned yet. I'm prepared also to give him a tremendous amount of time because I saw the promise that was. And you have apparently research and evidence, Dave, to say to the contrary. But while I had good expectations, I'm not surprised by this. I kind of expected this, that it was going to be a slow start. And he's got to get his groove back and his rhythm and his timings and his stuff. It's a lot. The game doesn't wait for you. And he's a year older and stuff, and things are happening. And I'm expecting it. So I guess to answer my own question, is it time to be concerned after 7 games? Absolutely not. Would you have liked to see him come back like a Steven Stamkos or like a Monahan or whatever? Sure. But one thing's for sure, he hurt his knee, if I'm not mistaken. Right? That's what kept him out. It was the knee. A knee doesn't really impact your face-offs. As much
but at the same time, we're not expecting him to be Manny Malhotra either.
I don't need him to be Manny Malhotra. I need him to be closer to 50% than to 40 because it's bad. And you're right. If he's going to be your 2C, even if he's got all the skill in the world, if the guy can't win faceoffs, it's a problem. So that's my concern. It's not about him in general. My concern is like that part of the game. It's a small part, but I think it's an important part. So I'd like to see him get a little bit better in the faceoff thought, and then we work on the rest. And so that'll bring it to the end of the episode, gentlemen. Thanks very much. This was a good one. Lots of opinions flying out there, lots of feelings, obviously. 2 games on the weekend, St. Louis and Philadelphia. I have no idea what to expect. I just hope better than the New York game. and then I'll be happy. It'd be nice to maybe get a win. That'd be cool. Maybe change, like Vito's saying, 1 or 2 wins and everybody's back on the happy bandwagon. That'd be great. Otherwise, thanks very much for listening. Thanks for getting to the end of the episode with us. If you made it all the way through, please consider liking and subscribing. If you had, tell your friends. We appreciate that. Let us know in the comments your feelings about any of the topics that we had today, be it about Xhekaj in the comments that were made, about Dach, about whether they really should rush to get that top 4D or take their time and not necessarily pay a king's ransom if that's what the ask is. And yeah, let us know. We appreciate you. We love you. Thanks very much. For Dave and Vito, I'm Matt, and this was
Get Pucked.